Welcome. My name is Dr. Kristie Soares. Today is March 1st, 2021. I am calling in from Boulder, Colorado, and I have the pleasure today of speaking with Luis Mario Orellana, calling in from Pompano Beach, Florida. And it is an honor to talk to Luis Mario, who is a pioneer of DJing, a pioneer of disco music, and also the founder of a very important organization named Legends of Vinyl that preserves the legacy of DJing and of disco music. So thank you so much, Luis Mario. It's a true honor to be here with you today.
Kristie, it's indeed my pleasure and it's an honor as well. And I love what you're doing. So thank you so much for having me share with you some incredible memories. Yes, indeed.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we'll get right into it. I just want to hear, to begin, the story of how you got into DJing. Can you tell me how you got into it?
I think I call it a blessing. It's one of those things as I was a kid in New York City, growing up in New York City, just going from one end to the other and listening to an incredible amount of music, bombardments of music coming from everywhere. I grew up in an area called Washington Heights in Manhattan, and in that area, you had the Latin community, strong community of Latinos, and I will travel to the village, and I will be exposed to the other side of the music with the rock and roll and the Motown and the whole era. Growing up in a Latin with a Latin family, you cannot help but feel the energy, feel this wonderful. Actually, we keep that to ourselves. We know that we have that gift, which is the Latin flavor, and we put that everywhere as we go, and we feel it. And so I learned from my family as well as a kid growing up in the 50s, the rock and roll era, listening to wonderful Latin artists like Richie Valens, for example, just to mention one person who actually made an impact. Unfortunately, he passed on that horrible accident. But he made an impact on all of us, continuing into the 60s. So people like Santana, Mongo Santa Maria, there are so many wonderful Latin groups that brought to the front that flavor, that wonderful flavor that is the Latin music, and it was adapted by so many artists around the world. There is no place in this world that Latin music does not appeal. It is that wonderful because music speaks to the soul, and that is the only ways that we can communicate. If you don't really know the language, you play a song and we understand each other. And for me, that was the beginnings of getting into the underground clubs and learning and listening to the music. And I was one of the first DJs that actually get involved with the maestros of the era, like Francis Grosso, that is, who actually allowed me to learn from him. And then there were a handful of disc jockeys in those days, very few disc jockeys, Latin disc jockeys, that is, who actually took that to another level. Once again, we play music with a hook. In other words, we included Latin rhythm, Latin vibes. It didn't matter whether you're a Puerto Rican or whatever, South American, in any way, shape, or form. Everybody put their own little sazon, as I call it. And we made a difference, and people loved it. I was in heaven as a 17-year-old kid, being involved in this and growing up into this business. So eventually it just became a natural, like second nature to me, and I was noticed. I was actually, people were watching. I didn't know because I was a kid. I didn't know that people were actually taking notice of what I was doing. When I play, I let my emotions in, and I don't know what I'm doing. I just, I get involved. And there was a producer in that took notice, like I said, and he approached me, and he was the first one to actually take a DJ from a nightclub to another outside New York City. It was unheard of for somebody, for a DJ, a nightclub DJ, to actually go and visit another club and be introduced as the best in New York City and so on. So I started traveling. I started the mid '70s came in, and he just went crazy. I went from one point from the East Coast all the way to Honolulu, Hawaii, to perform for 10,000 people. I didn't know what was happening, but it was happening. And they knew that I was making a difference because of the music that I was playing and how I will present that music. So one thing led to another, and I came back to New York, and I was chosen to be the first DJ to actually do the 4 continuous hours on 92 KTU FM in New York City. And that was another incredible time for me because nobody knew about the nightclub situation. This producer, promoter, he saw the opportunity, so he says, no, let's talk to the radio station and let's present this idea. So I have done so many things throughout the early to mid '70s already, like, and it was, it was incredible.
That's so fantastic. And I want to ask you, especially because I know that you started, if I'm correct, you started listening and working with, maybe even studying under Francis Grosso at the Sanctuary in
Right.
the very beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about that? So I can imagine, what did it look like? What did it feel like? The space? What was it like?
Yeah. Well, to me, I knew instantly as a young kid, my how can I say it? I wanted to finish high school and go into the army. That's what I was thinking. It was what I wanted to do. But once again, it was a blessing to me. It was a gift from God because He introduced me, took me to going to this place where I met Francis and I saw what he was doing. Immediately when I saw this man do what he was doing, actually going from, I never seen that before. I never seen a DJ go from continuous music. In those days, it was a band and a jukebox. That was it. And then this guy made a difference. So they got rid of the bands, and now there's just a person, the DJ, playing, from going from one turntable to another. Not with the technology that we have now, but it was crazy. The 2 turntables, and the people loved it. The music that was being played was mainly rock and roll, gospel music. It was, Motown and R&B, mostly imported. It was not heard on the radio. This was not played. This was not your top 40 kind of situation. It was actually imported music. And I fell in love with it. I said, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I stood right next to this guy, and he noticed that. He never said anything, and he says, I cannot teach you. You can only watch and learn. This is not something that you cannot tell somebody. Like now, they have schools for DJs, but in those days, we just had to, if you had it, then you can do it. But if you understood, you get to the point that you can actually dissect the song in your mind, because that's your gift. Some people cannot do that, but obviously we are able to do it. Then I met the first group of these jockeys all in one place in 1974 or 75, I think it was. And Francis and myself and some other DJs were part of this record pool, 99 Prince record pool. And that's when I started to mingle with all the DJs because we were not able to mingle too much. We were working. So, and I was one of the lucky ones to work 7 days a week or 7 nights a week. And I couldn't go and visit another person, another DJ, because I was working. But that's when I started to see that the DJs were coming together. There were DJs in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, all over the place that were coming together. But in those days, there was the gay community was in one corner, the Italians were in another corner, the Latinos were in another corner, and so on and so forth. The blacks in another corner. And and that was the behavior. That was the way it was, and I always thought about that. I said, that's we all speak the same language. We all put the needle on the record the same way. We just present the record in a different way. That's all. It's the same song. It's just, So years go by, and I always had it in my heart that someday, somehow, I will bring all of us together, as we should be. And but that's when I got involved with the Legends of Vinyl, which I started to, because I have books, I'm on books, and this is one of the Bibles of the Love Save the Day. And yes, I am here, my picture is in here, there's so many books in there, but there is a very important thing. 90% of all of these books are about either 3 or 4 individuals who I know them very well. They're friends of mine, and also like Francis is very little about Francis. David Mancuso, Nicky Ciano, I really like Nicky a lot. We're very good friends. And Larry Levan. But if you're not in the gay community, you are not being paid attention to. You are completely dismissed. And that is, I cannot accept that, because we all matter in this case. We all paved the way for for what's going on right now. So I always have that in this, I wish that somebody can actually bring to the world that, that we exist, that we matter. I mean, I've done a lot in my life, and I am mentioned probably in very few paragraphs here and there, and not enough of my accomplishments, and I have accomplished quite a bit in 50 years in this industry. But if, like I say, this is one of the reasons why I am in love with what you are doing, actually, and I appreciate it, But I went from one thing to another, but, well, that's just the way my mind works.
I want to say that you held up Tim Lawrence's book, Love Saves the Day, and there's a great photo. I was looking at it the other day. There's a
Can you? I cannot hear you.
Oh, can you hear me or no?
Very low.
Oh, how about now?
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The other day I was looking at Love Saves the Day, Tim Lawrence, and there's a fantastic photo of 99 Prince Street of all the DJs, and you're right in the middle, right? Do you know which photo I'm talking about?
Yeah, yes. Isn't that incredible? Yes, I was. I mean, I can tell you who I was with. All of these incredible guys. Next to me was Leo Sayang. He's from Peru. Wonderful friend to this day. We still get on the phone and we laugh, and he was next to me on my right, Douglas Riddick on the left, and it was a meeting about that. And I'm the only one who actually pay attention to what was going on. and it happens that, and Tim Lawrence is part of the Legends of Vinyl. Tim Lawrence put that, and I talked to Tim and I said, thank you for putting at least a picture of me. And on top of that picture, Michael Capello, another DJ, Michael Capello is certainly definitely missed in the, you know, we don't know where his whereabouts, which I'm still looking for him. But in those days there were DJs like to this day friends like Iris Rodriguez, Jenny Costa. Jenny Costa is the only Latin DJ that to this day is still doing her lunch break, like she's calling, on the radio. She does it every day. God bless her. She's still actively performing, and she is so wonderful, very dear to me. Robert Miro, Bob Miro, another disc jockey, very influential. Not just worked in the East Coast, but went to West Coast, and so many things. Bacho Mangual. Bacho was another DJ that actually started in Brooklyn, Latin in Brooklyn, among a lot of Italians. David Rodriguez, rest in peace, charismatic, incredible, talented disc jockey, worked at the original Lamplight, the Leisure Den, forget about many other clubs. We worked together at the Ginza. What a club, the Ginza, that became Reflections. Al Garcia, Colombian disc jockey also, and a good friend, Eddie Rivera, who I respect him a lot. He gave me so many wonderful opportunities. Coming back from touring in 1975, I landed back in New York, and I found out David Mancuso was dismissing 99 Prince Street record pool, and Eddie Rivera and Judy Weinstein decided to open their own record pools. Eddie Rivera, IDRC, International Disco Record Center, and Judy Weinstein, For the Record. Judy took me to lunch, and she wanted me, because I was up there flying high in those days, and she wanted me to join her record pool. 99.9% of her members were gay, and she only catered to the gay community, basically. Not everybody, but there was a majority of them were gay. Eddie Rivera, cared for the Latinos, for all of the Latin DJs that were really making a name for themselves, and it was very hard. I mean, we're talking about people like Ray Pinky Velasquez, who got lucky to, I think, by going to audition for another good friend of mine, Ronnie Soares, when he was working at the Ipanema. And then Eddie Rivera gave him the opportunity to go to Vanguard Records, and he did so much also. So Eddie gave the opportunity to not just disc jockeys, but to a lot of the artists that were up and coming, young artists, that they made a name for themselves right after that. And him and his whole family, Dennis Rivera, Jamie Rivera, Carlos Rivera, all the Riveras, Louis Rivera, Carlos Rivera Jr., his brother, who passed also. But the whole family was together. So when you went to see a Pickup Records, it was like a fist. Everybody was there, and the warmth of the Latin family was there. And so you felt welcome. You actually felt like you were welcome there. It was not a cold environment. It was just a wonderful experience. We have people like Jorge Wheeler. Jorge worked at a club called the Bumba Macau. Then we have Ronnie Soares, a talented disc jockey who I know the whole history, because he started working at a club that I was working at called the Director. It became Twinkle Zone. And I was working with Francis, Al Garcia, Leo Sayana, Iris Rodriguez. We all had a night, but the Sundays belonged to a Brazilian night. And we went all going like, we get these stories from the waitresses. They say the Sundays are incredible. And I said, really, what's going on? He says, it's Brazilian night. You should see it's packed. And that one thing led to another, and that they had to move because it was so crowded. They had to find another location. The second location, from what I understand, it got flooded or something like that, and finally they end up in the location on the across the street from the Roseland. Beautiful place, and he made an impact because he was. You see, Ronnie had a gift also because he was a dancer, and he was a good dancer, and but at the same time, if you don't know the music, hey, but he was playing at the Ipanema, and he decided to get an assistant, so he what's his name, Pinky Velasquez auditioned for him. Anyway, so there are so many other DJs, but and then I ended up working with Ronnie at a place called L'Oubliette. No, L'Oubliette probably was a French club that we worked at. L'Oubliette, yeah, on Fifth Avenue, and I love that. I love that little. For the little time that I was in New York, and then I moved on. I continued touring. But in those days, the Latinos in general, they were everywhere, everywhere. Now the mainstream nightclubs became, that's where you can get a job. The underground was underground, but very few clubs. So the mainstream clubs is where you had to go, you know.
So tell me a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you from, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit for the people that were not around during that time period. I think it's difficult to imagine how hard it was to mix records because from today with the automated machinery, obviously, it's much easier. Can you tell me a little bit about in the beginning when you started, early to mid 1970s, about some of the ways that you would mix the records that were totally new? No one had ever done it before.
It was well. We have to go back to the my mentor, my friend Francis Grosso, who actually came up with the sleep cueing technique. The sleep cueing technique, it was just you had to know the song, you had to know the music. This is what is so important for you to have the transition to be acceptable because there was no anything to slow down or anything in the record. You have to use your finger, and those turntables had a belt. It was difficult to do it, so you had to do the sleep cueing, and that's how you did the transition. It was called a change. It was not called a mix yet because there was nothing to mix with. It was just a change. And Francis did it so well, and then we all follow. 1972, 1973, 1972, I think it was the end of it when another dear friend of mine, Paul Casella, came up with the actual beat matching. By then, now we had better systems, better turntables, and we had a Bozak now, a mixer. When I said, we had just two little knobs. I had two knobs, that's it, left and right. There was one amplifier, there was no EQ, there was crossover or any of that kind of stuff. It was just two turntables, two knobs, one amplifier, that's it. It was so, but we didn't know any better. So, Alex Rusner, who is the creator of the mixer, and he called it Betsy, a little mixer, left and right. I mean, you can just do that. That's what we were using back in the day. It got a little more sophisticated with the changes, but you had to be good about it. The audience was used to that. While Paul Casella came up with the beat matching, I'm playing 45s, which is extremely difficult to do because you have a 45, the length of a 45 is about maybe 2 minutes and 15 seconds, 3 minutes, and so, you know, it's a very short time. So you really have to work so much throughout the night, because that's what we had to do. And to mix a record, either the instrumental to the vocal or vice versa, you had to know when to drop that record perfectly, okay, not to upset what the dancer is doing, you know. So eventually we learned how to beat match, but you had to remember that people like myself who were from the beginning, we kind of didn't really want to go there. It's difficult to explain. When you have a crowd in front of you, you don't really have to follow, in my book, you don't really have to follow a beat match situation. You have to go with your feeling. You have to understand that the crowd is in front of you. If you feel like going from one end to another, a different record, different speed, you can do it if you know how to do it. You understand? You don't have to just go boom, 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 boom into the next song. So I still apply to this day banging. For example, you take a record and you go from the snare to the snare, you know, and you just mix the record, drop the record in that sequence, in that way. Although I do now, I have every tool available. I'm very curious. I like to know what technology is bringing to us nowadays. I have a controller, I have a CD decks, but I still have my 1200 turntables, and I still play. I have a great time doing it with a collection like the one I have right now. It's minimized everything, downsized a lot, but I still enjoy my vinyl. I'm, you know, but that's the beginning was raw. It was crazy. Playing rock and roll, playing Motown, playing gospel music is not your how can I say, doesn't match. Nothing matches. Nothing was meant to match. You made it happen. So there you have it.
So now you have this new generation of DJs who are doing things that are completely new, that have never been done before. And you also have, if I understand correctly, the 12-inch record is coming out in the mid 70s. And so now you can play a song for longer without having to slip cue or to mix into another song.
Yeah.
So during this time period, did the methods that you used to mix change once you had the 12-inch record?
Well, I have a great story about it. Another good friend, Roy B of Roulette Records. He kind of noticed that all the DJs were kind of rushing into flipping the song to buying two records, two 45s, in order to extend the song. And we got creative, like we all did. I mean, you had an instrumental side, a vocal side. So one night we played the instrumental first and the vocal after. The next day we played the vocal first, and then, you know, so we had to be creative. We needed to do that. Because we had no other choice, working, you know, every day. Sometimes we play the record in the middle of the instrumental where there's a break in order for to change it. So he thought about extending even the 45. He extended the 45, and then he went into the 12-inch. But the person who's actually giving credit to for coming up with the 12-inch is Tom Moulton. And Tom Moulton came out with I think it was Walter Givens who did a mix for a song by, I think it was Double Exposure, 10%. And he came up with that, and he went on the studio and decided to put it in one on 12-inch, making the grooves bigger in order for it to sound better. And that's the difference between an LP, a 45, and the 12-inch sound. It was totally impressive, and it was powerful. And so to us, we still got 12 inches because now we have more flexibility in order for us to actually play it from the middle forward and come back and just extend the record for 10 minutes if you wanted to do it. But the idea was magnificent, and it changed the world. It really did, for all of us in every aspect, talking about sound quality and everything else. And it was a very good idea, absolutely.
And I want to give credit. Tom Moulton, of course, created the first 12-inch single, but the sound engineer that actually pressed the single was Jose Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember Jose? Can you tell?
I never met Jose. Can you believe that? Um, but he is in. I mean, I think it's 90% of this collection. His name is in it, and for what I understand, he's no longer with us. But there's some people tell me I'm wrong. But I've been looking for Jose for such a long time. But once again, you prove a point. Yes, absolutely. There it takes the quality and the talent of this guy is just phenomenal. And they had a great team working with Tom Moulton. And I think that Tom Moulton, at one point or another, he should give kudos to Jose, because he needs to do that, because alone he could have never done it. He going into a studio and you have an engineer like him. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just that important. That's one of the reasons why it's important for me to give the respect to these wonderful, wonderful people. And then he actually opened the gates for a lot of people to go into the production as an engineer and so on. And that, to me, is I did a little bit of it when I went to California and worked for Warner Brothers. The Gat Band had a song called "Oops Upside the Head," and I got to the studio and I did a 45, came out at 45 and so on. But it wasn't easy back in those days. It was to do an edit of any kind. It took months to go into a studio, to work day and night to do this kind of work. And a lot of everything was unreal. The editing, the splicing, and all of that kind of stuff. It was a lot of work. I have to tell you the truth. Now it's done in a laptop. I guess I've done quite a few of those, but it's easy. Now the technology, you just can do just about anything.
So I'm very curious to learn more about IDRC and Eddie Rivera and the community of DJs there, because the way the story goes, as you said, David Mancuso and Eddie Rivera had a little bit of a disagreement about the importance of Latin music. And in David Mancuso's point of view, there was no need to create a special division for Latin records. Eddie Rivera disagreed, and whatever happened, happened. And IDRC becomes, as you said, not just a place that has more Latin DJs, but that specializes in Latin music as well. Can you tell me about your experiences with IDRC?
IDRC was, like I say, Eddie brought something that we were hoping for a long time. Eddie, I mean, from 1970, when the Funny All Stars came about, and I mean, that was an amazing time, an amazing era. And the Latin performers like Joe Batan, a good friend also, who started to Mongo Santa Maria, and a whole bunch of bands, and they were kind of making the transition into the kind of a disco little thing. I mean, Joe Batan came out with a song called "The Bottle," and Eddie was, yes, totally on point, because there were a lot of Latin DJs and they were not getting the product, as we call it. Okay, and he had to make a decision, and I think that IDRC was successful because he finally gave us the product that we were expecting, that we were hoping. And I honest to God don't know exactly. I think everything fell in place. They had a disagreement, but at the same time, David was fed up with the whole thing. David was just didn't want to continue with the record pool. A lot of headaches, a lot of feedback committees, and a lot of DJs are DJs. We work nights, and then we had to go there and pick up records, and then sit there and fill out a feedback on the record. And then you got home with like, I don't know, 50 to 100 records, and then you had to listen to them, and then you had to tell them exactly whether you like it, because the record company needed to know, and that's why they were providing the record to the record pool. But Eddie had a different idea, a different approach, very creative man, and he put his family together, his brother, his nephews, and everybody, and he started it in his house. When we used to go on pick up record at his home, and it was crazy. I mean, you could just walk in the kitchen, and everybody was eating and dancing and playing music, and it was like, I mean, oh my God, it was fantastic. And they treated my wife well also, because I was touring, and she had to go and pick up my records at IDRC. So either Jamie Rivera or Carlos or any, they will help my wife with the records, because there were a lot of them. And this poor woman used to just sometimes take the train with a whole bunch of records. And, oh God, just thinking about it, it's funny. And then ship them to whatever city that I was performing at, until I said to her, "Why don't you just let me tell the people at Eddie, I say, do me a favor, just put them on UPS, I'll pay the charges, put the records there." And I used to get like boxes among boxes. But we were getting now the product that we were not getting at 99 Prince. And he was giving the opportunity to, like he did it to Pinky, and he did it with me, working at Melons and a huge club also. He gave me the opportunity about that. He started the festivals that they were amazing. He will bring the community, the whole community together to the streets, and close the streets and do these festivals and bring the artists and the DJs to perform. And that was what opened so much more. And I give him so much respect for what he did, you know. I worked with him at a place called the Cork and Bottle, and he was the Latin flavor of the club. I didn't do that. He did. He would bring the Latin flavor to it, and he was packed every time that he played. It was packed. You know, but this is the wonderful thing about Eddie, and it forever will be remembered by, because he changed everything that we knew about record pools and how to interact with each other as a community, really. So thank you, Eddie, and thank you to his family, because a wonderful family, really wonderful, the Rivera family, much appreciated.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about the Latin music, but even disco music that was not Latin had a lot of Latin rhythms.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. They were 75, 76, 77, maybe even 76, 77. You had people, I mean, everything that was coming from, especially with the Brazilian kind of a kind of background, because Brazil is so rich in rhythm. It is just a rich country by itself, and we were listening to Sergio Mendes from way back in the day, and to this day I still play a few songs by them. Brazil 66, Brazil 77, and so on. Mas que Nada, and so many songs. I mean, there are a lot of songs I can remember. You know, working in clubs like the Copacabana. I mean, I'm one of the DJs that worked there at the Copa, obviously. It was, the impact of it is amazing. So, yes, the disco had the flavor. And right now I'm doing a show Saturday and Sunday from 3 to 5 on my radio station. And I'm playing all my 45s, and I'm going in alphabetical order. It's amazing to hear the music from 74, 75, 76 with a Latin flavor. And I'm talking about disco. Whether it's instrumental, whether it's anybody who was anybody, they added that little flavor of Latin. And it worked. It's contagious. It's just contagious. So that's why they kind of capitalize on it, really. You know?
I'm thinking as well, Richie Rivera, DJ Richie Rivera, DJ at Firehouse, Anvil, Flamingo. I understand that he did the mix for Anita Ward's Ring My Bell, which, if we think about it, has a very Latin sound to it.
Ring My Bell. Anita, yes. You know, I don't remember if I you're probably 100% right on there, because you have done your research. But the song is totally acceptable. Everyone to this day is acceptable because of that particular rhythm. Because, you know, but I can't say much about it. I'm sorry, I didn't do my homework on that one.
No, you're the expert. You're the historian. So I want to ask you also about the relationship between the club disc jockey and the radio, because if I understand correctly, it was pretty separate in the 70s. The club disc jockeys were breaking music that was not even on the radio. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You are touching a subject that I always have the opportunity to say is one of my favorite topics. As we all know, radio stations, they're very difficult in many ways. They have a programmer, and they program a certain amount of songs, and that's all they do, 24/7. And the programmers, they are secluded. They just go by Billboard, let's say. They open the page of Billboard and they go, if Billboard says it's, oh, I got it. No. So we, the club DJs, not that we were in competition, because that was not in any way, shape, or form. We never meant that. We just were creative, and we had the opportunity to have a live audience. And we immediately, when we put the needle on the record, we got a response. We got that immediate response. Or whether you empty the dance floor, you knew immediately that that record really didn't work too well, but we had the response. And we knew that we had 2 copies. And the audience were absorbing this, and the audience were accepting it. They were screaming, and they were running to the record store the following day and say, I heard this record, and it goes something like this. And they started singing it to the record guy. And they were buying it. When they played the record, they were happy with it, but they said, this is not how I heard it at the club, because we were making a difference. We were actually selling millions and millions and millions of dollars in record sales. The radio was not. There was one person, though, that was paying attention. There was one very important individual in our industry. His name is Frankie Crowder from WBLS. He didn't have anybody telling him what to do. He actually was his own boss, in the sense that he would play the entire song. He would start playing the 12 inches. That was unheard of in a radio. It was only limited to a 45 edit. And he started going to the clubs. And he started to pick up from the club DJ what he was playing between 1 and 4 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. So it was the peak of the night, and he would take that the next day and he played it on the radio. That's why WBLS made such an impact from 4 to 8, because that was his show every day. And we started selling humongous amounts, outrageous amounts of money in records. I mean, you know, bypassing by far the promoters from the record station, radio station, excuse me. So yes, we did that, and we are happy, and I still say that every time I can that I can in an interview because it's a subject that a lot of people don't know. And fortunately for the radio stations, some of them did the transition in 1977 or 78, at the end of 77, when my manager, let's call him manager, Roy Webb, send out 3 letters to 3 different radio stations at the time. And he says, why don't we do a show from midnight to 4 in the morning that is exactly what happens at the clubs. Because remember, when Studio 54 opened the doors, the whole world wanted to have a Studio 54 of their own. And I was the one chosen to travel the United States, opening clubs after club after club. I mean, it was insane, but that's how it was. So each radio station went, nah, I don't think so. How can you crazy? How can we play 4 hours nonstop with? What about the commercials? What about the money? What is the money? Oh, okay. Phone rang one day from WKTU FM. They say, let's give it a try. And the boogeyman came into the picture, and that's Roy Webb as the boogeyman. And I was chosen to be the first DJ to be on radio for the first 4 hours. And the rest is history. After that night, I mean, a lot of radio stations started going like, well, I think they do have a point. I think that there's something there, and look what happened. You know, everybody has every radio station after that decided to continue. So I'm part of that particular history of that happened as well, and yeah. But we sold records more than anybody else.
So, and when you were on the radio, obviously you were mixing. You were mixing nonstop for 4 hours. Is it correct that the DJs during that time period on the radio, they weren't mixing, they were playing the song, one song stops, they play the next one?
No, I mixed it.
You
have
mixed.
to.
Yeah,
I
but
mixed.
the others did not.
I freaked out. I gotta be honest with you, I freaked out because they took me from a club with hundreds of people in front of me, and they put me in a room, a very small room with 2 turntables and a mixer. That's it. And I asked them for a monitor because I needed to hear what was happening. They didn't give me a monitor. They didn't know what a monitor was. So I had 2 turntables and a mixer and a headphone, period. There was nothing, so I couldn't hear myself. I couldn't see the reaction. And I looked at my manager and said, are you kidding me? You want me to do this? You know something, the hand of God was on me, and I still have the recording, and it came out fine. And I did the 4 hours, and like I say, we were mixing. Every DJ, as far as I know, including Jenny to this day, she actually mixed the records, you know. Now, most of these jockeys prepare things. They pre-record things. They tweak it because now they have the tools to do that. Now you can get in front of a laptop or computer, and you can, if you mix the record in a different way or whatever, make a mistake, you can take that part out and you can make it fine, and wow, they are fantastic. But that's not how it works. You have to play it live. And if you make a mistake, guess what? You're human. It happens. The record scratches, the needle gets messed up, so you have to change the needle or the cartridge in the middle of the night without anybody paying attention to it because they don't know what you're doing. In the dark. I had to change in those days. The turntables had a belt in it. So the belt broke, and we had to change the belt in the middle of one song. And the song was almost ending, and you had to be ready for there was no other ways to do it. So there were an amazing amounts of things happening in the backstage, let's call it, behind the DJ booth, that a lot of people don't know, but we made it happen, and wow, yes, that's just the way it was.
Tell me also, you mentioned WKTU. I'm thinking about Paco Navarro. We don't have enough, I think, research, enough people talking about the importance of
Paquito,
Paco. Yeah.
yeah, Paquito. I had a little history with Paco. Paco was very, still to this day, will be remembered, obviously, with much respect. And but we had a back and forth one day because it was about the record situation. Yeah, and because I always speak my mind about this particular subject, which is the record, the radio DJ versus the nightclub DJ, and with good reason. I mean, he was proud of what he did, which he should, because he was magnificent in his craft. But the truth is the truth, and I will always say that. Hey, listen, we sold more records than you did. I mean, we had a little back and forth there, but that was a friendly one, and that's it. But he did made tremendous impact, like so many other radio DJs that came up, especially on WKTU. You know, for some reason, I should be getting paid for mentioning WKTU every moment, but. Yeah, they all do. And Paco, everybody, I have some copies of Paco's talking and saying a whole bunch of stuff. It's history, Kristie. It's history, and it's a wonderful time for all of us to give respect to these people. Absolutely.
I want to end by asking you, who else is important? Who are the other, especially Latin people, that were involved in DJing, involved in the early days of the disco movement, that we are not hearing enough about in the books, in the documentary?
Oh, well, there's so many. There's so many is insane. The list is endless, Kristie, because there are too many. We have people like Jelly Bean Benitez and Little Louis Vega, who actually they are iconic in they have become an icons in our industry. Yes, they have delivered insane amounts of product out there. They're still very actively performing. But there are others that one of the reasons why I created Legends of Vinyl is to bring to the front a lot of the DJs that are not mentioned in books. And I have managed to do that. And Bacho Mangual, Aris Rodriguez, they're alive. Jorge Wheeler, let's say Nefi Centeno, Tony Moran. Tony Moran is and Albert Cabrera. Also, you used to be the Latin Rascals. Tony Moran, come on, Tony Moran is magnificent, the greatest jockey to this day. He's still performing live. Obviously, Latin Rascals have a history of their own. Hippie Torales, wonderful. Jimmy Cruz. There are a lot of Morales. Bobby Morales, David Morales, John Morales. Ray Vasquez, and they all came out of IDRC. All of these people I'm mentioning to you, they all came out of IDRC. Junior Vasquez, obviously, Izzy Sanchez, Richie Rivera, Humberto Fleites is the only one person that I mentioned from the state of Florida. I don't know, I mean, I know a lot of them, but they're not from the first generation DJs, okay? Oh my God, Al Garcia, but I don't know where these people are anymore. Like I said, Lou Gorbea, and so on. My apologies, but I can't remember all of the names, but I do have a list. And it's easy to actually look into legendsofvinyl.com, where I have every name available. Every name is there for the world to see. And I invite everybody to please visit legendsofvinyl.com, and you'll see all the names from all the different record pools and first generation. I created the first, the second, and third generation as the pioneers from 1970 to 74, second generation from 75 to 79, and third generation from 1980 to 84. The reason that I did until 1984 is because technology started to come forward, and everybody started using cassettes or reel-to-reels or whatever, and CDs and all of that. But yes, all of this is documented. A lot of stories as well in this website. That's it.
I want to make sure that people know that a lot of these names that you mentioned, these people are on the pioneer list. So a lot of these people were, in the first wave of inventing DJing as we know it today, these Latin DJs that we don't read about, but they're there. You could see their names on that first list.
Every name so far that was part of that of the dance music culture is in the Legends of Vinyl website. We're still looking for some people that are on that list. I was able to obtain the list through the family of Eddie Rivera, and also from David Mancuso, which is the first generation from David Mancuso. And those are the names that appear on the Scepter record, Disco Gold Volume 1 and 2. All of those names are the first generation. That record came out with all of our names in that record. And that's the first generation. Then Eddie Rivera, unfortunately, he passed when I created the Legends of Vinyl. And I approached Jamie Rivera. And I asked him, do me a favor, if you have a list. He says, let me look. And he found the list and he provided to me. And then I put that on the Hall of Fame, because they deserve it. They actually deserve to be acknowledged. And and with what you are doing right now, it is so wonderful, really.
Thank you so much, Luis Mario. It is an honor. I want to encourage everyone that watches this to go on legendsofvinyl.com, look at these lists, look at the interviews. You have done many interviews with these people that you mentioned and others. We can find their links to your current radio station. You run your own radio station, is that right?
I had to do it because about when this whole pandemic started, I put together, when I pick up the phone and I call one person, everybody comes forward, and I says, why don't we do a mix-a-thon on Sundays? Let's do a mix-a-thon. Let's just go on Facebook and play live. The idea is great, except that the Facebook and Instagram and all of these platforms, they have the algorithms, they knock us down because of a third-party infringement situation. And so I got fed up with it, and I said, let's get our own. So I opened my own radio called Visual Radio, the Visionary Haven, and it's also on one of the pages of the website. And we are 24/7. Right now, somebody's performing live for 6 hours. Some of them, Ray Vasquez is on Wednesdays from 6 to 9. Nicky Ciano is on Sundays from 6 to 7. Danny Pucciarelli from 5 to 6. I got 3 to 5. Al Magliano. I got DJ. All different disc jockeys. For Latin music, we try to give them Latin from like 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. on Sundays. We play Latin music for, and people love it. And we have a chat where people can, they just can't get enough out of it. So I'm happy to say that we just reached 138,000 visits within 7 months. So we must be doing something right. So we have shows, visual, everything is visual. I have DJs that do the MTV era from the 80s. all the videos from the 80s. I have an artist, DC LaRue, who brings a show called The Soundtracks of My Life. And this is music from the 50s and 60s when he was growing up with his mom. So he plays all of these standards, you know, of Frank Sinatra and the doo-wop era and the Motown and all of that kind of stuff. So the radio is doing incredibly well because of the variety of shows and music. Once again, I am one of those people who I believe that, and I say this with all due respect to everybody, and you can go crazy trying to find an expiration date in any record. There is none. There is no expiration date. So I ask everybody, just play the record. If you have it, play it. So, and the audience will be surprised to, you know, I don't really stick to just because it's popular, it should be played. No, I mean, I just mix it up. It doesn't really matter. It comes from left field, bring it forward. And that's just the way, you know, I learn, you know.
When we post this, we'll make sure to post links to everything that you're talking about, to the visual radio. And also the last thing I want to mention is that if people want to hear your mixes, your recordings, which were, I believe, even on Reel to Reel of your mixes from the early days, they can find that on your Mixcloud.
That was the Mixcloud on the Luis Mario, I think it is. I forget which link it is, but it's Mixcloud. And what we did was the Reel to Reels I still have them, and a collection of cassettes. I recorded every club, every night practically I recorded. And so I started transferring all those digitally. So I sat there hours and hours and days trying to record this into the computer. So now it's saved and then posted on Mixcloud, and people can go there. And I have recordings, live recordings from back in the early 70s. That they were just recorded and little cassette recorders. I don't know if people remember this little Radio Shack little cassette recorders that you just put it there. I'm the only one who has a recording of from the sanctuary of Francis playing live. And you know, I would love to donate that someday, because it's a cassette, it's a 90-minute cassette. And Francis will not allow anybody to record. And I says, Francis, I want it. This is sure, no problem. And I'm the only one who has that. And then obviously I do tributes and stuff like that, which I was playing the same type of music, you know, same playlist, let's call it, at the time. You know, 1970, 71, I was doing the same thing. And so I hope that people can tune into or go to Mixcloud and listen to some of this great music.
Well, thank you so much, Luis Mario. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. We're very grateful to you for sharing your stories here today.
Man, you made me very, very happy, Kristie. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure indeed. And I wish you nothing but the best. And if you need anything that I can help you with, just please give me a call. I put together actually a little folder that I would like to send to you with a lot of information and videos of Eddie Rivera when we did the tribute to Eddie and his family came to New York. I do the awards every year in New York City, and I acknowledge we did a tribute to Eddie on IDRC, and a lot of the DJs showed up. And I also have the video, which I will send it to you if you don't mind. Obviously, I would love to send that to you.
Please, yeah.
There's a lot of information that is really relevant to what we were talking about right now, and you know, and list of DJs you can find that on the website, or you can, you know, I can provide that to you. But if you don't mind, can I send that to you, that folder?
Please do, yes.
That would be awesome. A lot of stuff, you know, a little bit of me, but most of it is about everybody else. It's about what we've done, what we're able to achieve, and stuff like that. But once again, I'm at your service. If there is anything I can do for you, Kristie, and then thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you are doing, because as I been growing older and older, you know, I always think about how do we leave our legacy to people, you know, to read about, to know what we've done. And we have done so much that people need to know. The Latin community did step up and deliver, and we're proud of it, all of us. And I thank you so much. And like I always say, LOV is the message.